Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to our conversation on biophilic design today. My name is Andrea Arce Jarquin, and I have the privilege of serving as the president of the Interior Architecture and Design Student Association this year. So let's welcome our panelists over here. Yes. Thank you. Well, first of all, I wanted to start off by thanking you all, students, faculties, and guests for being here, actually, and especially to the Gambrel Center team for making this event accessible for all of our students. I know we have more than just design students in here, so I appreciate you all for giving us your time. I also want to acknowledge our lovely professor, Paula McDonald, whose leadership and vision has brought this panel actually to life today. So thank you for continually creating these opportunities from us, design students, to learn from professionals and to expand our thinking beyond the studio to learn more about design. Because for all of our design students in here, the more perspectives we engage with, the more thoughtful our design and becomes. So yes, thank you so much. Tonight's topic is rooted in the fact that beyond just looking right, design and good design feels right. So biophilic design actually challenges to rethink environments in a way that restores our connection with nature, a well-being, and the human experience. And the truth is, design meets us everywhere. In the first light that comes through your window when you wake up in the morning, in the path that we move through from class to work, and in the spaces that either make us restless or restore us. So whether you're a design student today, a nursing major, a musician, a finance major, or you just came here for fun, I invite you tonight to stay curious and to engage with our panelists, because as I mentioned before, design shapes us all. So this panel also reflects IADSA's mission to bring you guys with this opportunities to talk to real work professionals. And with that, I want to thank our leadership team in the IADSA board. First of all, Amelia Holland, you're here, yes. She's our treasurer and co-director in the program, and whose precision and dependability make everything run so smoothly. And also Reagan Hack, who is over here, and she will introduce herself in a second. Thank you both, honestly, for helping out, and because these events will not be possible without you. They are creative, they're reliable. I could not ask for a better team to work with, and they're awesome. They never miss a Google Calendar alert, so yes, that's that. And with that, I will turn things to Reagan. She will be introducing our lovely guest tonight, and thank you all again for spending your night with us.
Thank you, Andrea. Hi, everyone. I'm Reagan Hack, co-director of marketing and planning for the Interior Architecture and Design Student Association. IADSA's mission is to connect students with design professionals, foster collaboration across creative disciplines, and build community within the IAD program. Tonight, we're diving into biophilic design, the idea that people have an innate connection to nature, and that the spaces we create should reflect that. Biophilia isn't just about adding plants or sunlight, it's about designing for human health and happiness. Natural light, organic textures, and views of nature have been shown to lower stress, improve focus, and support emotional well-being. These principles appear in major building certifications: WELL, which centers on human health and restorative environments, and LEED, which focuses on environmental performance and sustainability. Put simply, LEED protects the planet, WELL protects the people, and biophilia connects the two. Now I'm thrilled to introduce our panelists who bring these ideas to life through their work. Chrissy Burton, a licensed architect focused on sustainable and high-performance design. If you guys could just raise a hand when I announce you so we can, thank you. Christina Held, president of Held Architecture, known for creating human-centered, sustainable spaces that blend beauty and purpose. Steve Nygren, founder and CEO of Serenbe, a biophilic wellness community near Atlanta that's become a national model for sustainable living. Holly Christian, design principal at Perkins & Will, whose award-winning projects unite innovation, sustainability, and human experience. And last but not least, Professor Paula McDonald from our own interior architecture and design program at Queens, who continues to inspire students to see the connection between art, space, and environment. Please join me in welcoming all of our speakers. We're so glad to have you here.
Well, thank you all from my end as well for coming and participating in this conversation. First, I wanted to start beginning by exploring the heart of today's topic, why biophilic design matters. And I wanted to hear first from you, Christina. What does biophilic design mean to you personally and professionally?
Biophilic design means everything to me. So for me personally, I always loved nature, animals, children, and they are a big inspiration for everything I do in architecture. And in my work, we always look for a connection with nature, to incorporate as much daylight as we can, to make the spaces connected with nature, incorporate natural elements. So basically to make the person living or occupying the space as comfortable as possible, create the most healthy environment as possible. So even if sometimes clients don't know what biophilia is, or even what they really don't want sustainability per se, they still get it. Yeah,
that's good. How about you, Holly?
Sure, and thank you for having me. I would say biophilic design, it's connecting people to the earth, right? Kind of in its most basic term, but I also, it's sort of a deeply resonating concept. My mother actually was a nurse, and my dad was an agriculture teacher, and I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina on a farm, and so when I was a child, I thought the only thing I want to do is leave this place. I want to leave the mountains. I want to leave rural. But I found myself, so I went to college, went to Chicago, studied, practiced, did amazing projects, but I found myself every year just coming back and back and back. And biophilia came into corporate architecture, and I was in corporate interior design, and things resolved themselves. It made so much sense to have nature in architecture because of all the benefits of nature. So we'll talk all about that the rest of the hour together. But at any rate, it means a lot to me personally as well.
How about you, Chrissy?
Thank you. To me, biophilic design is basically not pitting the built environment against the natural environment. That, the buildings that we're making are, they're shelter, but they're a lens through which people can view their natural environment, to appreciate how the sun comes through the windows, or how there are different thermal zones within the building. So to me, I'm always thinking about how you can experience the world outside, but while you're in the building.
Perfect, thank you. How about you, Steve? I know you have a different experience than all of us here sitting down, because we're kind of in the design field, but you are actually living in a community like this.
I'm living it, yeah.
Yes, so talk to us a little bit about
but similar, I grew up on a farm, generational farm, 5th generation, in Colorado, and so you just understood how things worked in nature. And then when I realized that I was going to be a developer by default, in order to save the greater land on the edge of Atlanta, what do we call ourselves? Because we have one of the first agri-hoods, we're dense, urbanist, we're environmental. And the only word that really encompasses everything we're doing is biophilic design, which to me is all living systems. And we've come through a period of time where we've been imposing both architecture and plans on the built and on the land rather than in relationship to it. And so it's a total relationship of all living systems.
Thank you. So, for biophilic design is often linked to well-being, as some of us may already know. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the human condition. Holly, do you mind sharing your thoughts with us about that?
Yeah, and I thank you too for that opener. Experience-driven design. In designing interior places, spaces, millions of square feet for just an enormous amount of clients over my career and thousands of people, it is really all about the human experience. So it's about the lives inside these spaces, right? It's the people inside, and what do the people need to feel their very best, to experience joy. And, so of course spaces need to be well designed, but adding, just having biophilic design, applying the principles of that, of wellness, it supports the person, the whole person, and, of course their experience. So, just a number of ways to do that. We can get into that, but certainly daylight. Daylight, as you said, bringing in signs of life, the plants inside, the materials, the air. It's just every type of system, to your point. But, again, designing for the human experience. And what do people need and want to feel truly alive, to feel their very best? So I would say biophilic design and biophilia in design supports that in the biggest way.
Can you share with us maybe a project or an instance where you truly had a moment of awe, for example, where you realized how well the inhabitants of a project that you created actually benefited from that design?
Sure. There are a lot of examples, and today, starting with mass timber architecture, that has really changed just the workplace experience, the large scale built experience, larger scale, not the largest scale, of course, but just having mass timber construction is so, it helps our profession so much to have the mass timber. But kind of the first experiences of when I realized biophilia was so important, and it's really daylight. That was the number one thing. In office space, in workplace, in higher education, it's like having access to daylight means the world to people. And so I realized that in Chicago from, I think it was like Anderson Consulting, which was one of the consulting firms. They're not even there anymore, but it was on one of the top floors of what was the Sears Tower at the time. You could not see light. It was almost like nauseating not to be able to see light. And so when we would work with clients, they would say, can we just do like a little bit of a glass light on the office front? We'd be like, yeah. And they'd be like, oh, we love that so much. And then, oh, we can do a whole glass front, So it's just access to outside. So I would say it literally was like taking off dark glasses or something to have access to daylight. That was one of the biggest ahas early on. And so from then on, and now as a design director, design leader, it's like we have to have access to daylight. Everyone needs that. We need like adjustable lighting so you can attune your environment to the right settings for yourself. Fresh air, of course, all types of things. A lot of fresh air and a lot of outdoor spaces. That's new in the corporate world as well, having balconies and access to daylight and fresh air. Excuse me. So those are some of the examples of aha moments. Yeah.
Chrissy, I know for the many years we worked together in different types of buildings, from federal work to healthcare. I know you led our sustainability group for many years, and I wanted you to give us an idea of your thoughts on kind of the same subject through your experience from all the projects you've worked on. What did you find was the most important aspect in sustainability that you found?
So with our work, we did a lot of renovation on existing buildings, particularly on bases. We did Department of Defense work, and some of these buildings were 100 years old. And in the 80s and 90s, well, beginning in the 70s, but through the 90s, you know, sustainability or energy was a big focus. And so in the pursuit of better energy, a lot of these beautiful windows were shut up, you know, big open spaces that had cross ventilation were kind of divided up. And so in the course of some of our work, we opened these spaces back up for workers because we have better technology to conserve energy, but also because we recognize sometimes you can sacrifice some energy efficiency in the name of having a pleasant place to work. And it was really nice to see people just love the building that they're in. You know, every building is a huge carbon investment. If you can live in that building for 100 years, you know, you're doing a better job than building the most efficient new technology building every 20 years. So for me, it was encouraging people to love the building they're in, being able to renovate it in a way that makes it useful for another generation.
Thank you. That's great. Christine, I want to ask you this within the same type of idea, but based on the work you did focus more on schools. I know you did some really good schools that were very different in the Charlotte area. Do you want to share with us your thoughts on that?
Sure. So I personally do a lot of passive house together with Biophilia and Biobiology and WELL living standards. We also combine that with mass timber. So we necessarily don't do certifications on all types of buildings we do, but we draw what we need for a particular situation. But for us, it really starts with the site. So for example, for schools too, they are big projects, but we try not to disturb the site minimally, because if you disturb the site, you have to cut down trees. You actually disturb all of the microbiomes that are in the earth, which are actually also important. You dislocate local wildlife, and that is really all important to us. So we like to work the architecture to embed it into the topography, shuffle as little dirt around as we can, and then we like to do constructed wetlands, which actually help children be in tune with nature. They can go and have a biology class outside, they can get dirty and muddy, and that will again attract frogs and turtles and butterflies, bees, and this is just a lot of joy for little kids especially. It seems so simple when I talk about this. It's like everybody should know this. It's really not anything genius, but that's where it starts with the site. And then you go to the building, and that's very much climate dependent. So you study where is the sun going up, where is it coming down, and what climate are you working in. So I work in this southeastern climate for 25 years, so I understand it very well. And we want to always open up to the south, but shield it in such a way that you block direct sun, but you do get winter sun rays that are steeper inside the building. You want views, you want operable windows. This is a very contentious point when you work as an architect, especially in schools or office work. We do want operable windows, and that is because that is biophilia, which is a term that you shouldn't use when you talk to architects, because that means it's expensive. That's an architectural term. All it means is that children who have to concentrate so long in school that they have an opportunity for their brains to rest and to actually hear the rustling of the leaves, to hear, you know, a bird outside. It really does wonders to just relax the brain. And it does, like the parasympathetic nervous system is what really kicks on with that, and that is the systems in your body that help you with digestion, with lowering cortisol, with lowering anxiety. And you can imagine how a kid that is anxious, and then you help him just with these simple tools, they can study much better. They get into less fights, they are less confrontational. And that's not only for schools, that's for office building, for any type type of building, really. So then you study the sun. You don't want to open up a lot of windows on the west because you get really harsh glare, and you also get a lot of heat gain, which we don't want in this climate, for example. But you do want some eastern sun. It depends on the type of building you do. Maybe you want to place your break room there if people go in the morning and make a cup of coffee, or you have your cafeteria and the kids have their breakfast, then you think, oh, it will be nice to have some light in there that greets them in the morning. And that now ties in with your circadian rhythm, because you want to wake up in the morning, but then as the day goes on, you want to tune off, like slow down, so it gets you ready for rest at night. And you can do that with daylight if you're lucky. If you have a building that's too big, and we try in general to not have any room except storage rooms, mechanical rooms that don't have a window. So even in schools, it was just not a big budget for a school, but even the restrooms had a window. Cheap finish is nothing spectacular, but you walk into that restroom, you're like, wow. And it's just because we put a window in there. It makes a ton of difference how you feel in that space. So you can do it with BIOS, if you know what that is for the interior design students. That is a system that actually can control the light, and it can put you more in like the light blue spectrum. You do it artificially, essentially. So with technology, you make the lights emit the type of color of light that is suitable for that time of day. So you will start like with light, and then it will be warmer to the end, so it sort of winds you down as you go home, that you then can, go to bed. So it's like I talked a lot, but it's a long story. But that's how you think about it. Just, people wake up and they go to bed, and what happens in between, and, how do they use the building? And if you think from that perspective, like what does the person do in the building and how do you feel as you move through it, it can really guide your design.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all the observations. That's wonderful. So biophilic design is not just for high-end projects. It is for everyone. And I want to hear from you, Steve, on your experience with the role that your community is playing on this aspect, on how it is in fact for everyone.
Well, so many of these things, they all impact. And I think one thing we haven't talked about is the landscaping. We have now about 600 homes, galleries, commercial, 5 restaurants, 3 coffee shops, hair salons. So it's a complete village. We don't allow lawns anywhere, so it's all natural landscaping. It's amazing. We have over 300 children, school-age children, full-time, and there's not one reported sign of asthma. So this shows that there's a direct relationship between biophilic design and all the various issues and the health outcomes. And so we're 20 years into it now, and so we have kids who were born there who are now in college. We have people who moved there in retirement ages who are now aging in their 80s and 90s. And so you can see the difference that it has. We have with 1,300 residents, there is not one person who identifies as obese. And so this is because you're walking, you're exposed to fresh food, the entire system's there. And you can feel the joy, literally, in people waving. And so if you look at all the dire statistics coming out of America on obesity, asthma, happiness, it doesn't have to be. It's the built environment, and we need to just start addressing that. And it's simple things. I mean, one of my favorite, we have blueberry bushes at all the crosswalks. And one of my favorite stories is a couple who had moved from the city, and their friends from the city were out, and they all had children. And they'd had this big lunch, and they said, well, we're going to have blueberries, for fresh blueberries. And so when it came time to clear the plates and go get the blueberries, the visiting parents went to the refrigerator and her kids ran outside. And so that that alone is how we're changing the minds of our young people, and it's truly affecting the health, and we can measure it now. We're far enough into it.
I love that. I know that you just released a new book. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I can't wait to read it. But how do you, in your book, do you address, by chance, how can we educate the public?
Well, that's why I wrote the book. You know, and it is, the name of the book is Start in Your Own Backyard, retrofitting where we live with radical common sense. Because I think, as we've said, a lot of this is just common sense. Why aren't we doing it? But why have we stepped so far away from it? And for the last, I think, 5-6 decades, value engineering and efficiency has been the key thing that everyone has looked at. And I think, you know, the results of our human health and planet health are examples of that. And so we've got to turn and change that. And so, what you're doing here, what everybody can do to just stop and say, hey, are you asking the questions? I cannot understand why we're not asking the questions on why we're sicker than we've ever been. Why are we putting up with this? And so that's the big thing. And so it's to start in your own backyard is because too many times we just think the world, a big corporation or big government has to fix it. And I do not know of any situation necessarily that's been fixed by that. It starts with a grassroots organization, so that's where we have to stop. I know anyone my age never imagined we'd live in a room without smoke. You young people don't even know what I'm talking about, do you? But that started with a group of airline stewardesses that decided they would go to the head of the airlines and say, could you just give the worst seats in the back, make them non-smoking? And of course, everyone started requesting the worst seats in the airline, and they kept increasing that to where now you have no smoking. I owned restaurants, and I remember when we decided to try 5 tables in the corner, and so that is a movement that was totally started from the grassroots, and so that's what we have to start doing, is in our HOAs, our neighborhoods, our street, ask why.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's such an important aspect of it. Tell me that story again about when you used the soil that was removed from some of the sites where you had to build and then reused it in a fun way.
Oh, I've got so many of those. Well, this is where we're developing one section, and when you're building buildings, you can't have the loose topsoil. So you're moving the topsoil away, and it's a shame because there's all that great topsoil, and you know I thought, well, we're always going to need it to backfill in yards, but we had more topsoil than we could use. I said, just leave it all figured out. Once we know that everyone has taken what they need and put back what they need, and so we have a pile of dirt that's probably 30 feet tall and about that wide, and so we put a trampoline up on the top of it. And it's great. People drive in, you can drive past, and we have benches and parks down there. And all of a sudden you look up and there's just people, kids. It raises the spirits of every age. People get up on that trampoline because it's in the ground. You know, back when we first moved to the farm, so we have several trampolines in the ground. Man, it's good for your health. It's great for your spirits. And one of my favorite stories is an 80-year-old woman one morning. She said, "Oh, I have had the best time." I said, "What have you? What about it?" And she says, "That trampoline." She says, "I've always wanted to crawl up on a trampoline, and I couldn't do it. But now I just kicked my shoes off, and I was able to tiptoe in, and I sat down, and all my grandkids started bouncing around me, and it was the best morning I've ever had." So it's these common sense things, you know, we're just not looking at common sense.
Right. Thank you so much. That was great. Exactly like I remember it. All right. So the next part of my points that I wanted to talk about is more about us designers and how can we shift the role of the choices that we make. Of course, I can think of a few, but I want to hear more about how can we integrate biophilic principles in a way that is authentic for our clients. And we can go maybe with Chrissy next, and then we can.
One of the ways is just educating your client. I think that it's probably something we don't talk about in school, but like every client becomes your patient and you have to talk through the whole design process. And obviously a client wants to feel very involved. You don't want to be disrespectful to their ideas, but it takes a lot of time and patience to be able to present them with some real world examples of the design features that you're trying to incorporate, but also talk them through some of the choices. You know, why do you want a 20-foot long hall without a single door or window? What will that serve? You know, in the most respectful way. Why would we not want to be in a black box? So it's about learning to communicate your ideas more effectively and about bringing them into that process in a very gentle way.
Nice. Well said. So you do residential?
Some, yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, and so how can we get clients to bring in like biophilic principles or lead them through a process?
Yeah, in a more like authentic way.
In an authentic way. You know, well, one, Perkins and Will, I don't know if you all as students have heard of Perkins and Will. If you haven't, please look us up. I think we are an aspirational company. We care very much about people. We care very much about the environment, and we have, you know, people just incredibly driven to support people and the environment. So all of our practice areas do that in a big way. And so I think a lot of clients come to us because they know we're sensitive to people's needs, the environment's needs, you know, the earth's needs. So that's, I'm just going to say, a blessing and a gift to be at a place that is known for high quality design, respectful design. So we do that, like I said, in all practice areas. So a number of clients would say, you know, we hired you, what do you think we need to do? And so we would share with them, we believe this. We believe, you know, these 5 things. We believe you should have access to daylight. We believe, you know, again, it depends on the scale of the project. I'm speaking mostly from interiors projects because that's where I've spent the majority of my career. Of course, we bring big buildings out of the ground too, so it is about sight and orientation to sunlight and solar connectivity and things. So, but from the inside, you know, we speak about the first impression. What could we do with the first impression? And so, as an interior designer, I would say put yourself in the space. That's what we do with clients. We say, what do you believe would, you know, give you the best feeling in here, the best experience in here? And so we speak about it from the person's point of view. And so that's one way of speaking about good design. Sometimes we would say, okay, to have the highest quality design, we need to be focused on regenerative design. We believe that when you hire us as a company or when you hire us as your consultants, you get that. You know, we say this doesn't cost extra, that we say this is inherent in the process. It's part of our specifications. Our specifications are as green and clean as we can make them. So it really is a holistic view. One more thing I'll just say, and again, at Perkins & Will, once again, we call it the living design framework for design. And because there are just reams and reams, an enormous amount of things we need to think about when we design spaces and design them well. So the living design framework is a way to think about design. Everything from, you know, beauty and poetics to regenerative to the tectonics, the way materials come together. And so we speak to clients using the 7 lenses of living design. And that's it. I feel like it's an easy way to talk about a lot of complex things.
So we have, I guess, both of those types of clients. So we have clients who come because we specialize in sustainable architecture and design for many, many years. And they are, of course, open and they want the best materials, insulation, energy efficiency, all of that. And those projects are a joy to work on. So what I encourage even those clients and those who are maybe not as interested in sustainable design, but everybody wants the best building they can get for the budget they have and for the whatever function they have to have in that building or space, is that I really like to gather as much information about the client as possible. So I really just let them talk a lot in the beginning. It's a really good way because they think that they want the 25-foot corridor with, that makes no sense. And they draw it up, but then I want to know why they have it. So they might tell you a thing why they have the 25, and you think, okay, well, that's not a good solution for it. So you're sort of translating what their needs are into architecture, into design, because you are the better translator, right? You can translate the ideas into built space more efficiently than they could, and that's why they're hiring you. So I never had problems with it because I like to see the site, I like to see what the objective is, I like to hear a lot from them to understand what they are ticking, what their personality is. If they are a school or institution, what the goal of the institution is. So I visit companies in their original building to see how they treat their coworkers, how they function, what they serve in the cafeteria. That all gives like that character. And then when I have enough information, I will go and I will do a design. And it is really very, very rarely that they are not excited about the design because it captures their essence. And you do that in a way that also connects them with nature, that has daylight, that checks all the boxes, but it's also theirs. And excuse me. And they're really thrilled about it. We just had an event at an office building we did in Huntersville. And that's one of those clients where I went to visit their office in Germany twice. And it's a very biophilic, passive house detailed. It's an office industrial space. It's a very, very unusual building for that type of function. And the people just didn't want to leave. They were there for the function. They were outside. They were all over the building. And everybody was like, oh my God, I love to work here. And that's really the biggest compliment, when people don't want to leave, they really like it. But yeah, just listen to your clients. That's my biggest advice. And read between the lines and try to understand them. And then you translate that with your professionals into something that makes sense and it will work out.
Perfect, thank you. So finally, let's look into the future. So in your professional experience, if you had to change something in the way we design today for the better, what would it be?
Sure. What I would like to check, well, I just was in Connecticut and I visited Philip Johnson's glass house, if anybody knows what that is. So that is an amazing,
they should
amazing,
know.
Yeah, they should know. That is just an amazing piece of architecture. It's a glass box with a round fireplace and restroom in it. And it is completely biophilic. I don't think they had the term then when that was built. It's beautiful, and all the detailing is done beautiful. And it's a modern building, but there is a lot of craftsmanship in it, in how the tile was laid. And so that's what I am really missing, and I would love to bring back, is some pride in how we do buildings, and that not everything is picked from a catalog, but that actually somebody put some art back into architecture, because I miss that a lot, and that brings the soul in. Like the biophilic is great, it brings a lot of soul in, but just the craftsmanship and art, and that can be in modern architecture, how you do the steel column, how you connect it, how you lay out the brick floor, with the orientation and all of it. But also, yeah, just some craftsmanship would be nice. I don't think we're going to get it anytime soon, but that would be nice.
Okay, so you ask, what would we want to fix?
Yes, something you would like to change for the better.
Yeah, change, okay. And thank you for saying soul. One, listening, of course, it always starts with listening. You have to listen, but you have to be curious. You have to want to know your client's problems. You have to turn them into your problems in order to solve it. So thank you for saying that, and also saying craft of space and soul of space, because I think the very best designers care. I mean, projects have a soul. You need to help find the soul of the project. So, in interior space, and specifically corporate interiors, spaces are usually rented, like an apartment. And so all these clients we work with, just so many clients, whether it's, I don't even want to name names, but let's say any financial organization, huge clients, just law firms, corporate clients, all types of clients, all these buildings in all of our cities are occupied by office space, right? So many office space. And office spaces are leased. So leases can be any length. They can be 3-year leases, 5, 10, 15-year leases. Lately, they've been shorter leases for many different economic reasons. But a lot of times, these spaces, so we design these beautiful, amazing, thoughtful projects, and then as soon as the lease is over, another client comes in here and it's all scraped away and it's brought back to a cold, dark shell, or whatever you want to call it. So all the materials are gone. So where do they go? So to me, that's the one thing I would love to change. I would love to find the most upcycled, reusable way to do our profession without having to go back to new resources every time. A lot of clients are fine with concrete floors now. They're fine with exposed ceilings now. So using less material, I actually appreciate that very much. In projects, they can't all look like that or be like that, but just being as resourceful as you can with the fewest materials that you can. I like to practice that way whenever we can do that. But I would love to reuse, and not look like Frankenstein or like a tree house. Like, it needs to look thoughtful, purposeful with reused materials. So I think we need to focus on that. Yeah.
The thing that bothers me the most is the thermal comfort aspect of design lately. ASHRAE standards are based on the male body. They've not been updated for a long time. There's that whole joke, I think it was a SNL skit about women's winter, which was basically the air conditioning season. So I would really appreciate some more creativity and thoughtfulness put into how we handle thermal comfort. I did read a case study about an office that basically spent a year creating cold rooms, creating hot rooms, having people by the window, having people away from drafts, and doing this constant internal survey of all of their occupants to see if they could be comfortable. And honestly, they didn't have a lot of success. But I will say that's because I think we have been literally conditioned to be 70 degrees every hour of the day, every day of the year. And that's unreasonable. It's not biophilic, it's not energy efficient, and it's very boring. So yes. That would be my change.
Well, picking up on that, one of the things, luckily, because I'm doing my own development, I get to do what I want to do. I don't have a client.
Perfect.
So I don't have as many. But one of the huge things along that is the people do not understand geothermal as heating and air conditioning, and it's one of the best things, I think, for not only does it cut your heating and air conditioning bills in half, but it's silent, and we forget about how the noise affects our whole energy system. And to be in a backyard, especially on residential or places where you don't have that grind of our the air compressors, and so that is one of the greatest things. And how we educate people is everyone thinks that anything biophilic or environmental is more expensive. And of course, it's the reverse. I have time after time that it's less. And we have a tendency to follow the same line on spreadsheets and compare things that are really not eggs, apples and oranges. And so geothermal is good. That Bosch, the big Bosch company, they put an experience center, leased that space for 5 years. We had to then redo. But they brought people from their 36 countries to show how the various departments that they have, from their kitchens to their tools to their solar to their geothermal. And so they built a most environmental house with that, Every one of our houses has to be certified, so that takes your energy down by maybe 30%. It had to be geothermal, which we are now geothermal mandatory. That took it down another 35 or so percent. And by the time you've reduced it 65 to 70%, your solar is a third of the cost that most people end up with, and a 2,300 square foot house could handle it. Now, after bringing 18,000 people through that house over several weeks, we sold it. The people got an 80% mortgage. The house was about 18 to 20% more expensive than another 2,300 square foot on the same street. Most of these environmental companies advertise about the payback, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. All right. The increased mortgage on this house, that 20%, their increased monthly mortgage payment was less than what their power bill would have been. And so it's cash positive month one. And so that's where we're not always looking at the facts in the common sense. What are we interested in? And so we could just do more to really tie costs and savings, both and health benefits as well, to some of these things to help educate people.
Yeah, just the healthcare costs. I know you also have a clinic in your community, and how does that work with the folks that live there?
A clinic, did you say? Well, I wouldn't call it a clinic.
Right. That's why I want you to talk about it.
You know, we looked at what's health and wellness, and I was just at the Global Economic Forum in Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago, and one of the most interesting presentations was from the president of John Hancock. And he said, you realize we're the only people interested in keeping you alive and healthy. And 95% of the dollars we spend on healthcare is for sick care, and we're doing 5% on prevention. And so that is a huge problem. And so as we've looked at, you know, we have healthy residents, as I mentioned. We have people aging in place, and they just want some place that they would like to go to. And we started looking at what are those places in America. And I came back realizing that, you know, they're cruise ships to death, and I didn't want to facilitate building something like that. And so we really have a European model. We're building an aging in place that we plan to break ground on for 97 units, but it's about hospitality. We set up a building to set the tone of a village of wellness versus an institution that we tried to bring in. And I'm happy to report that just by setting the intent in the last 5 years now, we have 27 health providers. So some have leased the space in our 2,300 square foot building, but then we have 21 LiveWorks. Y'all know what LiveWorks, that's where you have a commercial on the ground floor and generally 2 residentials above, so it's 3 streams of income if you're doing this investment. But our vet lives upstairs from her vet office. We have a potter. We have a doctor. So we've pulled some traditional family doctors and the pediatrician out of the Piedmont system, and they've set up their own business on our campus. We have the total alternative medicines. We have one shop that's a lot of your oxygen therapy and what have you. One from San Francisco said, "Oh my gosh, I have to go to three shops in San Francisco to find what you have in this one shop." A couple earlier this year moved from Boulder, Colorado to open the non-chemical pharmacy. They started looking what their competition was and found out it's the first in the nation. So we find when you set the intent, people are so anxious to be part of this movement that we haven't had to hire anybody to get tenants. They have all showed up. So,
Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you, Steve.
Do you have some Airbnbs in your complex that we need to like try out, you know?
we have a country inn.
Okay.
The inn at Serenbe, and then we have the inn, and then we have several cottages in the community that could be rented through the inn, and then we have Airbnbs. And we
Great.
also have we have people that have the little farms now. We've really created a whole movement. So they're doing cottages on the farm.
Nice.
And it's just an entire movement. By starting, we have changed the lives of so many people.
That's really remarkable. Fabulous.
Thank you, Steve. For now, I would love to open the floor for any questions that my audience may have. Please feel free to stand up, and we can get you a microphone so you can be heard well. I know I have plenty of scientists in the room, so feel free.
Hi, thank you all for coming. This has been really interesting, and I'm so pleased to have you here. I have so many questions, so I'm going to try not monopolize this entire thing, but two different, completely different questions. The first one is, when I was in college 20 years ago, we were talking about Kreuzberg in Germany, and they had done a similar development where they actually got rid of cars, and you could only walk and bike around for the most part, and there was public transportation that would take you to larger towns. Does that happen in your development, or are cars allowed? How are you mitigating the carbon footprint of a vehicle?
We allow. I mean, it's what we've tried to do is not be the idealist that prevents. We just do not make it convenient. And so your cars are not conveniently, if you park, you're going to probably leave it there because everything's close. We have a path grid and wandering streets. And you'll find people just aren't using their cars. Our traffic studies show that, and here we are, we're out. You don't think of it, we're remote, but we do. We're totally self-sufficient, basically, from medicine to the farms and general store, and about everything's there. So we have about 1/5 the auto trips that a normal community would have, and so they're just not using it. Our fifth, we have 4 phases or 5 phases. Our 5th phase does prohibit cars. There's no cars at all, but we have many pedestrian streets that you park remote. If you're going to one of those houses for cocktails, you're parking on the main street and walking a block to get to their front door, and people are not minding it. Everybody said this will never work. Well, they're paying a premium to do it.
Thank you. My other question is not related, although we could talk about that all day. And this is about life cycles and materials. And one of the biggest discussions I had was actually recently with a short contract rep, where getting the contractor in at the very inception of the building was really helpful for when you go and mitigate demolition and demolition debris, because as we all know, that's like one of the biggest pollutants within the construction industry. So how do you approach that conversation with clients? I've had a little bit of luck with that, but for the most part, the contractor will come in, especially if it's a quick job, and they'll be like, okay, we don't have the time, or we don't have the budget, we didn't budget for it initially, and we're not going to take care of the recycled materials. And what are some strategies that you have used in order to do that?
Strategies to mitigate the waste, right? I would say there's several, and it really does depend on the type of building. And I would, like the team here and folks here, when you bring a building out of the ground, making it the most, not just sustainable, but the smartest for the longest time is the best strategy, right? So to build the building, I would say that's the most important thing. To use even, I don't know that you can use vernacular materials necessarily so much this day and time, but bricks from the local location and granite from your local location. I think LEED helped us with that, like materials within a certain mile radius kind of thing. So in some cases that, interiors, it's just really hard because a contractor is going to come on to help you build the new building. So unless there are strategies in place, this is kind of the hidden part of the project. That's not part of the project, right? Like tearing the old project out before a new one comes in is like the landlord's problem. So that would be more of a collaboration between the landlord, whoever owns the building, manages the building, and it kind of takes the mentality like you would have as the owner of the building. You want to do something sustainable because, quite frankly, as the architect or design firm of the new tenant, we might not even be there when all that is being ripped out. In some cases, it's selective reuse. So that one, there's one, we have a huge campus with a big financial company in Phoenix. And I mean, it's just really outdated. It's just ugly space. You wouldn't go in there and you think inspired. There's no biophilia aspects to it. It's dark, but you go in there and you're like, the materials aren't really that bad. I mean, and you've got these acoustic ceiling tiles. So I'm like, we cannot throw this in the landfill. So, I think Armstrong, USG both have those reclamation programs. And so we're like, we cannot with a clear conscience just say demo. We had to say, you've got to come in here. But same thing with carpet. So those are the things, the manufacturers have a role to play, carpet and with all their fiber reclamation and, but those are all strategies for a small portion of the materials going into projects. So there's just a lot of room to grow. There's a lot of, because that is, landfills are mostly filled with construction debris. That's the number one thing in landfills is construction debris. And you look around and you think about it. Look at, houses. I don't do houses. I live in one and I have a neighborhood and I see what houses are coming down and what ones are going back up and ones that are nice. There's a lot going in the landfill. So I think that's upon just every individual.
I'll have a couple of examples what we did when we can. So I worked at the same time on a school renovation and on a renovation of an office. So the office had a lot of interior storefront. So I asked the client, do you need this? He said no. And then we took all of that interior storefront and gave it to the school because now the classrooms had daylight from the exterior wall, which was they could have never afforded. So. And then we worked with a client who did a passive house in Davidson, and they wanted to add an addition and make the existing house passive, and we did a couple of iterations, and they decided to tear the house down. But what happened is they called Goodwill, and Goodwill took the house apart, and they reused all the doors, anything that could have been reused. You also have certain demo companies that will come and take whole buildings apart, and they will salvage all the wood. They will grind the concrete and use it in aggregate for new concrete or as crushed stone as a substrate for new buildings, where the concrete's let out. They will, take the windows and they'll love the wood and the brick. And that takes a little bit of work, but then they store it and then they sell it for a lot of money because then, when it's reclaimed, it's like, phew. So you can try and do that, yeah. And then at one job we reused all the doors. I didn't use a single new door. We took them, we refinished them, and So you can be creative, I guess, but yeah, it's hard.
So I volunteer with a nonprofit called Greenbelt Alliance. It's a Western North Carolina organization. We have a membership base, and we create a membership directory based on this membership. And it is essentially this very organic network of professionals who all feel passionate about being sustainable and specifically rooted to the area of Western North Carolina. So when I have been most successful, it has been because I was able to make a connection. So basically building a network of people that have an interest in doing a particular thing. There was a office renovation where there was a farm that had chickens that liked clean cutoffs of gypsum board, so we could connect. we gave chickens bedding, you know. So, and like there's a contractor, D.H. Griffin, which is more Western North Carolina, that they're just exceptional at recycling because they have a very good profit motive. So, you know, build your connections. If you work collaboratively with your contractor and you come in and you say, I've got 6 people who can help you tear this thing apart, and those 6 people happen to be bedding chickens and reusing doors, et cetera, then, you know, it's a win all the way around. So build a network.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Micah. I'm a first-year interior architecture student, and my question is, I forgot your name. I'm sorry, but sir, for your neighborhood, do you plan to like expand your idea, and then if so, are there any detriments to your overall like idea for your neighborhood if you were to expand it? What do you think you would run into while trying to expand your idea?
That makes sense.
No, I never intended to be a developer, so I certainly don't want to do more of it, no. No, we're not going to take it out, but what we're doing is we've set up a consulting firm. We have a conference, we're in our 11th one every fall, called Migrant Placemaking. 2.5 days, and you come and you hear all the way from the government, the person who is head of planning and development for Fulton County at the time, he comes back in no matter where he is in the country, from Madison, and so you're hearing it from the very beginning, through the bankers, through our civil engineers, our various solar, geothermal, to the HOA, we have a Institute for the Arts. We have 1% transfer fee on every house that's sold. We bring the agricultural folks in to talk about the move. So in 2.5 days, we walk the community, you hear from these people, we eat in all the restaurants, because hospitality, we think, is a foundation. So that's the key. And now it's really great. I'm going around the country and we're seeing places that, you know, they're not copying Serenbe, which we don't want them to do. It's not about the width of the street. It's about understanding biophilic design and how we need to relate to the site rather than imposing a pattern that you liked from somewhere on the site. And so it's really encouraging. And so we're, from Australia to Scotland, really all over the world, we're starting to do this. So this is one of the reasons I've written the book, and you'll see it's more like a manual with QR codes that we can keep updated and referring to various resources. So we encourage, if it's an HOA, schools can look at it, so we're really trying to share what we've learned, because it's not hard, it's common sense. A lot of it you go back to 100 years ago. There's nothing really a lot different than how we developed communities 100 years ago. Thanks for asking.
Thanks, Micah. Anyone else? Davis.
Hi, I'm a herpetologist and I do a lot of outreach. One thing that commonly happens is I'll be showing an amphibian like a frog or a salamander to somebody, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I recognize those. I pull those out of my pool all the time." And generally they're dead at that point. I'm wondering if any of you have experience with natural pools, and do you see those as being like a feature of perhaps your neighborhood, Steve, or any of the developments that you guys are doing in the future?
Yes.
Do you have any in your community?
We do, yeah. And we don't allow any chlorine pools.
I have never had the pleasure of incorporating a pool into a neighborhood, but I did like a deep dive for a while there on them. They're beautiful, wonderful.
No, same. I don't know, pools, public pools, for example, in Switzerland, they have natural pools that are public pools, and they are really beautiful and very, of course, sustainable. But I'm not sure with the codes and with the health department if they would even be allowed, honestly. And for residential, I'm not sure if they would be allowed. You would have to specify them like a pond or something. I'm not sure that, otherwise you will not be able to pass it,
What takes a wetland from like that you've built out of school and makes it a pool? Like what are the differences?
Well, I have not, unfortunately, I suggested them many times, especially for public spaces, because I feel we don't have enough access to water in Charlotte. It's mostly privatized. But you can look that up and read into it if you're interested in it, but it goes through a set of natural filters with different sizes of sand and also through plant material. And you have, a zero entrance, and it's usually surrounded with, plants that are aquaphobic. So, and yes, they would probably attract turtles or frogs, and they wouldn't die of the chlorine. Do you know if it's salt water, if the frog will die as well, or only chlorine?
Almost all of them, yeah. There's like one that's salt tolerant, but they're generally not very tolerant of salt.
That's a shame. But we did a reflection pond, which nobody is going into to bathe, but we attracted turtles, so we did that.
How many people go swim in the local pond or get in the stream? It's the same thing. It's just what you call things as to how you can get it permitted and how you regard it.
That is so true. Reagan.
So I have a question. This all sounds great. As a kind of outsider that's just visiting tonight, it sounds fantastic. But also as a business owner who has had many change orders from contractors and the nightmares of building and the cost of building, how does this become more attainable? How does it become more incentivized? Whether it's government incentives or private incentives, how does this become accessible to the masses? Because to your point, Steve, I think it seems like there's a decent bit of science almost at this point that this helps people, that this way of living helps people. So how do we make it accessible to as many people as possible?
So many things. It's just the reverse. What does a blueberry cost in your front yard? What is the savings for not putting the lawn in, plus not maintaining it, plus it takes a third of your water bill? So in that alone, I can show you where it's unbelievable savings versus costing. You get into building, it's just wise materials. We have gotten addicted to this idea of cost per square foot. And so all of our builders are putting more sheetrock between windows and giving their clients bigger places to maintain that they don't really need. So it's well designed, more like Europe, to where we don't need these big houses. So if you start moving the house into a complete different size but keep the high quality, it's there. And there's a lot of techniques coming down the way. There's 3D printed houses. We're working with two different companies, one out of Portugal and one out of Austin. Man, if they perfect this, it's going to come down the road. Now, they're using concrete right now, which isn't so good, but there's some real effort to get clay and mix clay with various things. And if this can be perfected, it's going to change the building industry in so many ways, from waste to cost to everything. So I think stay tuned to get part of it. Step into this. Let's figure this out, because it's an emerging technology. Things are out there, and we're not just going to keep building houses or buildings in the same old way we used to.
I will also say that the design bid build strategy is not very conducive to this kind of work, because you're asking designers, you're paying for designers' time to specify, to detail, to choose materials, to walk you through the process, and then you're going to a third party who has no involvement and no investment in it. Their only investment is to seem like they saved you money. So they VE things, you know, for the sake of buying a seat at the table, essentially, and you're losing a really important part of your design. So, you know, I've done a number of LEED certified and high performance buildings, and the most successful ones were always with a design build team, because it was collaborative. I didn't have to detail and compare everything before we got into the field. The contractor had just as much investment in my design idea working out as I did. And that's hard to hear, because design, bid, build is just really ingrained in us as the only way that you're going to get a fair price on something, and honestly, it's not.
Great point.
Thanks.
Do I need a microphone? Yeah, you do.
This question's for Holly. You spoke about the 7 lenses of living design framework. I was wondering if that is a philosophy developed by Perkins and Will, and what the 7 lenses are. You mentioned beauty and poetics and regenerative lenses, so I was wondering, I wanted to know a little bit more about that, if you don't mind.
Well, thank you for that question. Yes, that is I'm just going to say a way of thinking, our design philosophy on design. You know, it loosely aligns with living building, and I understand there were 7 lenses from that. Our Bainbridge studio, Jason McLennan with living building design, is part of Perkins and Will, and so he was, and still is, on the forefront of regenerative work, just of all types and scales. And so when he joined our firm, I think we blended our design thinking with the diagram, essentially. And so it really, I mean, building things, I used to say, it's a miracle anything gets built, because there's just so many layers and people and systems, and to have it all work together, be built at the same time, you know, it's a lot. A lot of people, resources, everything. So, and there's a lot of concepts to get into a thoughtful design. So that framework helps us just think of all the different aspects of design so that we can speak clearly and concisely with clients and one another about how we're thinking and approaching good design. You are going to test me a little bit on the 7. So I think a little quick Google search is going to help us with that. But, you know, I like to point out poetics and beauty, because the aesthetics of a space, the feeling of a space, you need joy and delight. You know, so that's as important as the craft and the tectonics and how materials come together, as important as the regenerative piece. So, what's that?
I think we can do it.
Can we?
Yeah,
okay. You know, and ours are a little different on the living building. I don't know that. Yeah, right.
Are very specific. Okay.
But I would say look into it, because it really is. I think you're automatically just a step ahead in design when you can start to think about design in all those aspects.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, hi again, Andrea. And I am asking for a few of our students here too, because then a bit of context. Some of our final projects are going to be in healthcare. And I think biophilic design is so important. So we are, for branded environments, developing a physiotherapy clinic. And I think this is such an important concept to bring into patients and healing. So my question is, how do we design biophilia that supports agency, not just comfort, for patients to feel capable, not just suited when they enter a space? So if you have any thoughts on that.
I can speak to a few projects that we've done. One specifically is called Cone Health, and that is in Ashboro. so where the zoo is. This is a smaller, it's a cancer center, and it's a smaller clinic, I guess you could say. And I didn't work on that, but my colleagues did, and they were very proud of it because it's how it was sited, right? How I call it nestled in the landscape. So it was a smaller facility, so it had more access to light. All the rooms had enormous windows, so when the patient is there receiving treatment, they can look outside to a big window, see beautiful nature. The paths around the building, how you approach the building were all part of the design. It's near Seagrove, and so the artifacts and materials inside it were, a lot was Seagrove pottery and maybe even commission pieces, so it had a story to tell, so that added to sort of the, a good memory, I guess you could say, if you've got to be there, and, thinking of the thoughtful aspects to it. So that's one. But, I'm glad you mentioned healthcare, because when I was chatting with some of my colleagues who honestly are smarter than me about biophilia, about sustainability, about regenerative, I said, why is it that sometimes, especially in healthcare, it's like those leaf patterns. You're just like, I'm just not buying it. Leaf patterns on a vinyl. I'm like, this is not doing it for me. This is not speaking to me. And they're like, because it's trying to mimic nature and with the wrong materials. And so as a designer, I'm very sensitive to that. I don't want to do a leaf pattern in blue and purple on a cubicle curtain. I mean, that's not to me, that's not what biophilia is. So I do appreciate healthcare design for so many reasons, and it has asked us the question, make spaces that feel comfortable, healing, and all those things. But I think we need to continue to push the boundaries on what does that look like, what does that perform like, what are the materials, how do we lean into biophilia to make it feel better than fake nature.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Anybody?
Thank you everyone for coming. That was amazing. I have a question kind of for all of you. How are you making sure that your projects are sustainable before, during, and after all construction is over?
So we do passive house certifications. I don't know if you know what passive house is. It's a way of building. It's a standard of building buildings that are highly efficient. So they will use on average 25% of energy to run versus a conventional build. So I really like for my clients to go for the actual certification because it assures what you just asked, that the building is designed, that it is tested if it will design, and then later it's actually it's performance based. So you have to actually show that your building is sustainable and that it's working the way you intended it to do. So we have to design it, then we do an energy model. The energy model has to work. Then we have to do all the detailing. The detailing has to be executed. There is a third party who comes to the site and actually verifies that the things that we draw are actually executed, and they have to keep a log. Then we do a blow door test, which means the airtightness of the building actually has to be tested and it has to pass. And then all of the mechanical equipment has to be tuned and balanced, and for that there's also a login sheet, and then a third party, which is Passive House Institute of the United States, will check all of the data and then they will approve it. So that's a really good way, and there are other like LEED as well, where you can check that process. It's a great process because it holds everybody accountable, the designer, the client, the general contractor, third parties, that the building actually it's not greenwashed, but actually what you said you're going to go do is done, and everybody in the team has a certain standard to uphold. So that's how we do it, if we can.
My answer to you would be to that question would be very simple, and I would say it's the design process. The design process, we have to chart the path forward. We have to have ideas and have a vision for what we want to achieve. We have to establish our design drivers, and then I call it march to that. And so that's what the design process is. So if sustainability and biophilia is part of it, it's part of it from the beginning, and then we follow the design process and do the design that we all do to achieve that. So simple, no real details there, but I think that does answer your question.
So my experiences with LEED projects and also with the Greenbuilt Alliance's rating program called Greenbuilt Homes, and there's basically 3 steps to it, and it is the design process, it is commissioning, but it basically, you start with buy-in from your client. So like in the LEED charrette, you open the LEED charrette up by basically having goal setting, that it's separate from many of the design or programming things. You're like, when we have this building, what do we want this building to do? We want it to be a delightful space to live in. We want it to be an energy efficient building to own, etc. And then you incorporate all of those ideas into the design, and you monitor the construction to make sure that it is built that way. And then you educate the owner on how to operate the building. It is amazing how few people understand how to program their thermostat at their home. And that is a simple piece of technology. High performance buildings, with like computer systems that are running the programs, are very complex. So even with the Greenbuilt Alliance, we would hold at the Habitat for Humanity store like education programs. It was like a free drop-in, homeowners learn how to operate your highly efficient house. So it's following up with how do these systems work and how do I run them.
And the simple thing is we require certification. And it's a certification that actually has the inspection, so that you're not just certifying the plans, but actually the finished building. And every building, commercial or residential, has to be certified. And plus our dashboard, our water usage is an average a third of what the national average is on water. Our energy is half. I mentioned the health benefits. So the real outcome is the performance of not only the buildings, but also what it's like for the people living there. And that's your greatest reason that people will keep it up, as you start that culture of understanding what that is by living it, then everyone is going to want to participate because they see the benefits.
Thank you, Steve. Well, thank you again. As we conclude this conversation, thank you to all of you, our wonderful panelists that were able to be here tonight with us. A couple of them had to travel far. I really, truly appreciate your being here. Thank you, and all of our students and in the audience in public, also thank you for coming. It was great to hear your questions and have them answered. So thank you so much, and I hope that we meet again in the future with similar events. Thank you.